in the vast, windswept plains of the American West. One name echoes through history as a symbol of unyielding resistance and profound spiritual strength. Sitting Bull. He wasn't just a chief or a warrior. He was a holy man, a Wichāša Wakļáŋ of the Hunkpapa Lakota, whose vision guided his people through their most desperate hours. Today, we journey back to the 19th century to uncover the true story of the man who foresaw victory at the Little Bighorn and became a lasting icon of indigenous sovereignty. Born around 1831 in what is now South Dakota, Sitting Bull's early life was steeped in the traditions of the Lakota. He earned his name, Eotake, meaning buffalo bull who sits down, after a brave act in a raid as a young man. But it was his spiritual prowess, not just his courage in battle, that would define his leadership. He was known for his generosity, his wisdom, and his deep connection to the spiritual world. Qualities that made him a natural leader long before the U.S. government saw him as a threat. By the 1860s, the westward expansion of the United States was relentlessly encroaching on Lakota lands. Treaties were made, and just as quickly broken by the government, pushing Native American tribes into smaller and smaller reservations. The discovery of gold in the sacred Black Hills of South Dakota was the final straw. It was a blatant violation of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, and thousands of settlers flooded the region, protected by the U.S. Army. For Sitting Bull and other non-treaty leaders like Crazy Horse, there was no choice but to resist. They refused to sell their sacred land and refused to be confined to reservations. This defiance set the stage for one of the most famous confrontations in American history. In the spring of 1876, the U.S. Army launched a three-pronged campaign to force all remaining free Lakota and Cheyenne onto reservations. Unbeknownst to them, Sitting Bull was gathering one of the largest Native American encampments ever seen. Along the banks of a river the Lakota called the Greasy Grass, known to Americans as the Little Bighorn. It was here, just weeks before the battle, that Sitting Bull performed the sun dance, one of the most sacred and arduous Lakota ceremonies. In a profound act of spiritual sacrifice, he offered pieces of his own flesh and danced for a day and a night without food or water. During this ritual, he received a powerful vision. He saw soldiers falling from the sky like grasshoppers, upside down, heading into the Lakota camp. He interpreted this as a sign from Wakļāŋ, the Great Spirit, that his people would achieve a great victory. But he cautioned them not to take any spoils from the dead soldiers, as it would bring trouble later. This vision electrified the camp, instilling a sense of spiritual certainty and resolve. When Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry rashly charged the village on June 25, 1876, they rode directly into the fulfillment of Sitting Bull's prophecy, while Sitting Bull, as a spiritual leader and an older man, did not participate directly in the fighting. His presence and his vision were the central organizing force. He protected the women and children, while war leaders, like Crazy Horse and Gall, led the charge. The result was a stunning and complete victory for the Lakota and their allies. Custer and his entire immediate command were wiped out. The victory at the Little Bighorn, however, was short-lived. The U.S. public was outraged, and the government responded with overwhelming force. The army relentlessly hunted the native bands, destroying their food supplies and forcing them to surrender. To escape this persecution, Sitting Bull led his people across the border into Canada in 1877. For 4 years, they lived in exile, struggling with starvation and the harsh conditions of a foreign land. But the Canadian government offered no permanent home, and eventually, faced with the suffering of his people, Sitting Bull made the difficult decision to return to the United States and surrender in 1881. Upon his return, he was held as a prisoner of war for 2 years before being sent to the Standing Rock Reservation. The warrior who had defeated Custer was now a celebrity and a curiosity. He even briefly joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, where he was dismayed by the distorted portrayal of his people and the greed of the white world. He used his platform to speak about his people's right to education and to build bridges of understanding, but he never wavered in his commitment to preserving Lakota culture. In the late 1880s, a new spiritual movement called the Ghost Dance swept through the reservations. It promised that if the people danced and lived righteously, the buffalo would return and the white settlers would disappear. Although Sitting Bull was personally skeptical, he allowed the dance in his camp, believing it gave his desperate people a sense of hope. The local Indian agent, James McLaughlin, feared the dance would lead to an uprising, and that Sitting Bull was its main instigator. He saw an opportunity to finally remove the influential chief. On the cold morning of December 15, 1890, 43 tribal police were sent to arrest Sitting Bull. As they dragged him from his cabin, a confrontation broke out. In the chaos, one of the police officers shot Sitting Bull in the head and chest. The great Hunkpapa leader, the prophet of the Little Bighorn, was dead. His death sent a shockwave of fear through the reservations, directly leading to the tragic massacre at Wounded Knee just 2 weeks later, an event that marked the brutal end of the Indian Wars. Sitting Bull's legacy is far more than that of a warrior. He was a political strategist, a devoted father, and a holy man who fought not for glory, but for the very survival of his people's way of life. He remains a powerful symbol of indigenous resistance and a reminder of the deep spiritual foundations that guided the fight for freedom and sovereignty. His story is a vital chapter in American history, one of courage, conviction, and the enduring spirit of a people who would not be broken. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey into the life of Sitting Bull. If you found this story powerful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the figures and moments that shaped our world. See you next time.